Right. Okay, yeah. We were talking about Project L, the new Riot fighting game. Hi, I'm just David was asking my thoughts. He says, "Do you have any thoughts on the Cannon Brothers Riot Fighter?" Asked earlier, but you were busy. Them being fans and rooted in Street Fighter could be a great thing. Their previous game, Rising Thunder, was pretty much Street Fighter with cooldowns. Like, I know that FGC has no real ties to the League characters, but the Cannon Brothers, being the founders of EVO and the creators of GGPO, could lead to real big things. Yes. So, I would say that the Project L announcement is probably the biggest announcement in fighting games since Street Fighter 4. It might be the biggest announcement. It could easily end up being the biggest deal that's ever existed in this space up until now. Why do I say that? Well, to truly understand the gravity of the situation, the magnitude of what this means for the FGC and esports at large, I feel like you really need to understand not just the history, you just need to understand like more of the situation. And I'm pretty positive that you would only have this perspective on it if you were like FGC. Because if you were like, let's say in esports, or you never really paid attention to fighting games, or maybe you're even a fighting game publisher slash developer, you may not really understand or appreciate the magnitude of this. Or I could be way off, just super full of shit. I don't think so though. So here's the situation, right? Project L, the Riot fighting game that has, like they officially announced it day one during Evo on like the on the jump off pregame show. What makes this so epic is not just Riot and League of Legends characters. No, it's understanding how we even got to this place, which is by way of Rising Thunder. So, Rising Thunder is a one-on-one, free-to-play fighting game that was released in 2016 or so, or 2015, something like that. And it was developed by Radiant Entertainment, who had also produced this other game called Stonehearth, but is important because Radiant Entertainment at the time was essentially the Cannon Brothers and Seth Killian. Obviously, there were other people involved, but those are like the main guys that are like, whatever, like executive roles within Radiant Entertainment. And the Cannon Brothers and Seth Killian have also worked on a couple of fighting game projects before Rising Thunder that you may or may not have heard of, such as Shoryuken.com, aka SRK, which was in the sort of dark ages of fighting games, kind of like it was basically the only place for fighting games on the internet, right? These guys built that site and built the community themselves in an era where interaction with publishers and developers of competitive games is not a thing. Their other project, a little tournament you may have heard of called EVO, the largest fighting game tournament on the planet, but that's not even doing it justice. It's not even just that it's the largest fighting game on the planet, it's the largest open video game tournament on the planet. If you notice, all the other tournaments, whether it's fighting games or otherwise, don't exactly have open brackets that bring in 5,000 competitors to a single tournament. They are able to support more players in an open bracket format than anybody else in any other game or any other title, any other organization, period, hands down. The other thing that you may or may not have heard of and may have even been using without even realizing you were using it is GGPO. What is GGPO? Well, rollback netcode, which I would consider now to be the standard in fighting games. Well, GGPO is the standard in fighting games when it comes to netcode, was developed by the Cannon brothers in 2006-ish. I might be getting my days, like my dates way off, but it was like 2005, 2006, something like that. And they developed this netcode that is used in, it was used so that you could play, it was built specifically to play fighting games online, retro games in an emulator, such as, so, you know, it was like integrated into Kylera, Fightcade uses it, and it changed the game in the sense of, you know, fighting games were notoriously difficult to play online because of the lag. But these guys found a way to solve that and basically make it so that when you're playing somebody online, it's almost like they're right there. Like, really. But it wasn't really popularized until, or, you know, it's not, it wasn't in every game. It's still not in every fighting game. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why that is. But different games have used it throughout the years. Third Strike Online Edition, which was developed by the Killer Instinct people. Third Strike Online, Killer Instinct, Dive Kick. Oh, duh, Iron Galaxy. Sorry, brain fart. Iron Galaxy used it in Third Strike Online. NetherRealm uses it in Mortal Kombat and Injustice. I'll tell you though, Capcom did not use it in Street Fighter 4. Also not using it in 5. This is important because I think this is one of the biggest reasons why Riot acquired, why Riot wanted to acquire Radiant. And I have zero inside knowledge on this. You know, like I would love to hear that story one day. Tony Cannon, you ever want to tell that story? Feel free to hit me up. We'll get the story out there. But essentially, they created almost the perfect package when it comes to a fighting game. They built a game that was built to be played on keyboard, or at least accommodating for keyboards. No complicated input commands, because you could just press the buttons because it was cooldown based. And they even invented the netcode to make it so that playing online wasn't a subpar experience. They had, and they cultivated generations of fighting game players through SRK and Evo. They had the perfect package. The only thing they didn't have was characters, you know, like a recognizable franchise. But they had everything else. The game, the ability to the accessibility, the netcode, and the community. Accessibility, netcode, PC free to play, community, really huge community. They just didn't have the characters. They didn't have a franchise. So Riot, you know, smart move, picks them up, buys them. Rising Thunder shuts down. And everybody's like, oh, okay, well, I guess Riot's making a fighting game, you know? So fast forward several years, you know, nothing happened. I guess recently they put Rising Thunder, they set it to like open source or free to play. I forget if it was, oh no, they made it so that you can just host your own servers so that people can play, you know, even though they like shut down the game. So that was somewhat recently. And then more recently, after they made the announcement, shortly before, after Evo, before they did the Riot 10-year anniversary video or whatever, where they made like the official announcement and showed the footage for the first time. They made the GGPO netcode protocol open source and free for commercial use, meaning that any developer, anybody out there can take the GGPO netcode and access the source code, make any sort of improvements or modifications that they might want to do, and then use it in any project, even if it's for sale. This is such a big deal because what it does is allows anybody to make improvements to the code. Meaning, hey, let's say that this game doesn't come out for 2 years, right? They open sourced it like a month ago. And so they have basically the time between making it open source to it being released to have other developers improve the code and, yes, of course, use it in their own games, right? But that's a good thing that they use it in their own games because it becomes more of a standard, which means that it'll improve because more developers are using it commercially, which means a better experience for everybody. And also sort of, it might also have this other benefit of forcing publishers to use it, because either at this point now, they either have to use it or they have to make something better. Otherwise, they look like idiots for not using it. Why would you not use GGPO now that it's open source and available for commercial use for free? Why would you not do that if you're really trying to look out for the experience of the customer? So only time will tell. But yeah, so Dance and Rick, in Rising Thunder, the specials were done with one button. I only played it for just a little bit. But here's the thing. You put your tinfoil hat on, and you were really, as a fighting game player, sort of like looking at the big picture in the long run. If you are somebody who is aspiring to be a pro gamer, you're somebody who's been wanting to make esports into a career or something like that, you really need to be paying attention to Project L. And you may also find it beneficial later on down the line to have spent a lot of time with Rising Thunder. I'm sure, obviously, it's going to be different. But I also think that there will be a lot of stuff that carries over, because I don't see a reason for them to change. I don't see a reason for them to change, to reduce the accessibility by implementing complex motions when they know that the vast majority of players will be playing on keyboard. They will. So why would you go the other direction? There's no way. So from a competitor standpoint, I could easily envision a world where, you know, the FGC, the player base is just instantly expanded exponentially, just because of the sheer amount of reach that Riot has, not just here in America, but remember, Riot is owned by Tencent, the Chinese company that is, I guess, also partially funded by the government, by the Chinese government. Which sort of brings me to, you know, the next issues, which are that, you know, things can get a little unpredictable, or there can definitely be some touchy subjects when it comes to dealing with the Chinese government, as we saw with this Blizzard Hearthstone fiasco. Now, obviously, that's sort of like, I'm not even going to say that's worst case scenario, because it's not. There's way worse things that could have happened, but it was still a blow up. So, you know, I'm not saying that anything bad is going to happen, but the danger does exist that, you know, there will be some either visible or invisible influence in some way because Riot is owned by Tencent, which is, part of China. And I'm not one to believe that this country or that country is like inherently like the enemy or out to get us or whatever. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that like that influence, when it's such a significant financial one, it can manifest itself in different ways, as we saw with this Blizzard Hearthstone thing. It's not that the Chinese government was like, hey, Blizzard, what's going on, buddy? We don't actually know if that happened. I actually don't really think it did. But it's sort of this situation where either people will feel like the need to self-censor, or, as was more likely the case, somebody sort of got trigger happy and paranoid about what China would think, and then institutes this ban on the what's his name, Blitzchung, the guy who won the Hearthstone tournament. So I'm just saying, like, things are about to get really interesting, in my opinion. And the other thing is that Riot has a very specific way, a very Riot-centric way of approaching the LCS, right? Like, League of Legends players are not allowed to stream like Dota. There's no players union because I'm not super well versed on the subject. It just seemed, I just recall Riot trying to help the players make a players union by kind of like setting it up for them. It was something like that. I don't know. There's just like weirdness, right? So then, you have to think about, all right, well, if they're going to buy exclusivity so that me, the League of Legends pro player, cannot play Dota, like, there's got to be a cost of that, right? You got to pay for this exclusivity. But the thing is, Riot's got the money, right? If you're in your late teens, early 20s, you get the opportunity, you're going to be making, I don't even know how much League players make. Let's just say you make, somewhere around like Overwatch money, right? Like 70, 60, 70, 80 grand a year. You're like early 20s, you're still in school. What are you going to do? Be like, nah, I really, really, really want my freedom to play Dota on stream. No, fuck that. Of course, you're going to be like, yeah, whatever, I'll take the money. But now, imagine that you're somebody who's been playing fighting games for a long time. All the fighting games, in fact. You play everything. You play Street Fighter, Tekken, Guilty Gear, Dragon Ball, and you're really good at all of them. There's a handful of players out there that are super strong and competitive at multiple games. Only a small number, right? Now, Riot comes along and, you get this opportunity to play, professionally, as a Project L player or something. And, keep in mind, this is just speculation. We're just theory fighting here. But, let's say that you're somebody who's, an established FGC person that has won big tournaments for a lot of money in different games. Or maybe even in one game, Whatever game you won Evo for, it was not Project L. So you could be potentially faced with a choice, right? You get the opportunity to play Project L professionally in a league. And like I said, this is such a long ways off, if it even happens. But what do you do, right? People are going to have to, if Riot chooses to treat Project L the same way that they treat League of Legends in terms of the control that they impose over the pro players, the teams, probably, like the entire ecosystem, the commentators. I actually think the commentators are going to be the ones that get swooped up first and plucked into exclusivity. I actually think that the commentators have a way that's going to happen way sooner for them. So whatever commentators you enjoy seeing on CPT or Tekken World Tour or whatever, you best believe that some of them will be approached by Riot to be part of the the Project L rotating broadcast team. I just don't think that I don't actually think Riot's going to make players sign exclusivity contracts, but like talent for production, commentary and stuff, I don't know. I don't think that they would want to see somebody that had that was known for different games. I don't think they would want to see them doing both. Well, thank you. Hi, I'm just David. I'm sure there is a suggestion box somewhere on the Riot site. So, feel free to drop it in there. I'm sure lots of people are listening. Lots of people check that email address. No, honestly, like, I think the project is super. I'm cautiously optimistic. I really am. I mean, I have friends working on the project or that have been working on it. And I want to see it do well. This sector, right? This sector of the esports industry, right, has been, thinking about it like, like Wall Street. This sector has been underperforming for years, right? Lots of booms and busts in the other areas of esports, but not in here. But things are about to get real very quickly. If I were a developer / publisher of fighting games right now, I would be I mean, you don't want to. Do you remember? Not that this is even a possibility, right? Because of the financial situation of everybody involved. But you guys know the story of Netflix and Blockbuster, right? Before Netflix was was what it is now, which is a ginormous content conglomerate. They had a meeting with Blockbuster to see about the potential of an acquisition. This was still in the days where Blockbuster was not just relevant, but Netflix was in the business of mailing physical DVDs to its customers. Because before the internet was fast enough and people had, good internet, shipping physical DVDs was the Netflix business model. And they went into Blockbuster, they pitched them, they told them about Netflix. I'm sure they even told them about what would happen after, consumer internet got fast. I'm sure they told them, yeah, well, we're shipping DVDs now, but in like 5 years, ain't going to be no more DVDs. And Blockbuster laughed them out of the boardroom. Ha, 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 ha. Oh, you kids are cute. DVD rentals by mail? Fuck. Sure. Yeah. Not like we couldn't do that. Oh, looks like there's a market there. All right. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see, Netflix. And so what happened? All the Blockbusters now are gone. Like it didn't take. I mean, to me, it didn't take like a. You didn't have to be Miss Cleo to see the writing on the wall for physical media and the potential of internet distributed video, as a business model. Like, I don't really think it was all that like far-fetched at the time. And so the reason why I bring it up is because I don't know if the current FGC developer publisher landscape, I don't know if they really truly understand it, or I don't think they see it the way that I do. Certainly, I had a conversation with I had a conversation with somebody from one of these companies. I'm not going to name names on either front, but I was basically making the case for free to play. I was just saying, look, like one of the things that holds back the FGC is the access, because paying $60 versus paying $0 is a significant increase in price, really. If you haven't read the book Free by Chris Anderson, it basically explains the entire like freemium business model. And from my conversation with this dude, he was he's high up there. And he's like, oh, free to play. Oh, it's really hard. There's a lot of risk. And in my mind, I'm just like, well, if you don't adapt, you will die. Like, if you're not thinking about how you're really going to be able to compete with free to play like that, it's going to be a struggle. I mean, Riot essentially has seemingly unlimited amounts of resources with which they can throw at, the prize pool, the games, whatever. And here's the thing. I'm the guy that's like, the prize money doesn't matter. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't really matter. It's like not nearly as important as outsiders that come into this space think it is. It's just not, right? I mean, I had this conversation with somebody the other day where they were talking about like, like we're thinking of setting up this fighting game thing, and we can put a lot of money into the prize pool. Would that make it a competitor to Evo? And I'm like, no, absolutely not. No, Evo is not Evo because of the because of the large amounts of prize money. Evo is Evo because of how long it's been around and how well they have cultivated their community over the past 18 years. Right? They provided a very valuable service / experience for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and if you just look at the people who are watching online, millions of people over the past 18 plus years, really. That's why Evo is a big deal. And also because of the sheer amount of people that show up. But how are you even going to get that if without, like, how can you even get that as like an upstart, tournament, right? It's essentially impossible. Because it just doesn't work that way. It doesn't matter if you put up $1 million for, your new fighting game event, $1 million in prize money. It doesn't matter. You're still only gonna get a fraction of what you think you will, because there's just not enough people out there that can legitimately justify the expense of, the travel expense to really seriously compete like that. And that's the thing. Like, people who go to Evo are going, like, nobody thinks they're going to win that doesn't actually have a chance. They're going for the experience. And they're going because, in this world, Evo is a household name. So you can't just set something up, throw a bunch of money at it, and then expect thousands of people to show up. It just doesn't work that way. However, if you already had a massive audience already in gaming, and then you made a fighting game, now it's a little bit different, right?